Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today, I'm Durra Mudrikah, wants to explain about you guys about the Monster University. So let's we begin. Monsters University is the latest from Monster Animation Inc., released by Disney and Pixar Production in 2001. Using the ingenious market strategy of Monster University movie seems to have cued her fans locking. For by then 2001, the average Monster movie audience in was elementary school age children, now entering college just as a Monster University set. The story begins when little Mike Wazowski took a field trip with his school to Monster Company Inc., where he and his friends saw how scarers work their way from scaring children to the energy. Curious Mike then followed one of the scarers into a little bit boy's room, but in no case did Mike let the experience of following scarer linger in his mind. So he decided to become a scarer. Years later, Mike finally made it to Monster University. Like most new students, he was ready to begin his new life as a student. Mike's roommate at the boarding house was Randall, who learned together and tried to the best. Although Mike's major in almost all subjects did not win popularity and social status, he was often viewed as interim because of his unfrightening appearance as the scarer wannabe in contrast with Jim P. Sullivan's scarer blood. His popularity and social status seems to match that win Mike's, but they are hardly comparable to his college grade. Sully got kicked out of his league, replaced by Randall. During one scare test, Mike and Sully got into a fight and accidentally broke the screen tube. The disappointing Hanscrabble had decided to move them from scarers to screaming canned art. From then on, the relationship began to deteriorate to show that he deserved to be a scarer Mike. He decided to take on the scare scheme, and scare competition followed by the rest of the campus. Dean had Scrabble challenged Mike by promising to move Mike and his friend back to the scarer if they won the scare game. Unfortunately, Mike was short on team member to take on the scares game, and surprisingly, Sully filled the team's vacuum. To show that he deserved to be a scarer Mike, he decided to take on the scare games, a scare competition followed by the rest of the campus. Dean had Scrabble challenged Mike by promising to move Mike and his friend back to the scarer if they won the scare games. Unfortunately, Mike was short one team member to take on the scares game, and surprisingly, Sully filled the team's vacuum. The new team is named Ozma Kappa, or we came to say OK, made up of Mike, Sully, Don, Carlton, Terry, and Terry are Squishy. They live together in Squishy's home with their single mother. At first, Mike and Sully tensed over the difference in vision. After the first test, they both began to realize that they could never win if they were constantly at odds. In a way, that Mike is encouraging his team to enter the Monster Inc. It turns out all scarers are scary. There are some who are mediocre and yet manage to harness the potential for a monster within themselves. Victory or Victory by Augustine had put the rivals in a frenzy. They all trapped Mike and his friend to party and humiliating themselves all over campus. Even though he was a little frustrated that Team OK was determined to win the scares game, until the moment an anticipation comes, OK team will face off the Rose at the scare game finals. On the one hand, it's quite surprising because an OK team is a team that never been predicted to survive the playoffs. But on the other hand, the OK team is formidable contender for the Rose. In the final skills game, participants are required to scale according to the personality and target environment. Unexpectedly, The OK team can finally become champions and successfully move back to the scare department, but Mike had to swallow the hard truth again because Sule cheated in order to win the scare game. Disappointed with what Sule had done, Mike ventured into a building lab to test his own ability. As for Sule, the guilty stood up to Dean, had scrabbled, and confessed to everything she had done. Sule, who learned of Mike's reckless behavior, had leaped up to the building lab where he entered the children's vacation room. The children shot to contact their teachers and the police. When in a frenzy, as the police hunted Mike like Sule down. The door that connects the room at the building lab fired because it was turned off on the side to avoid anything untoward. And the only one to get it back to work was to collect as much cream as possible, though they did finally her get their job to come around. Okay, so today, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.